You're listening to Wellness Junkies,
where wellness gets real, not perfect.
Welcome back to the show. It's Amy, and I am joined by Dr. Dan, who is the internet's favorite physical therapist. But he is, I'll give you a quick bio on you before we get started. So Dr. Dan, PT, DBT, is the author of The Pain-Free Body. He's a doctor of physical therapy, currently working as the clinic director for MIMS Method PT in Midtown Manhattan. And also, as I said before, the internet's favorite physical therapist. He specializes in sports physical therapy, specifically working with professional dancers and performers on Broadway and across dance schools and institutions across the city. He treats with a full body approach and believes education and understanding the whole body and its processes is the key to getting better. Dan shows his passion for education and the human body on his social media pages, where he has grown to over 1.5 million followers. Congratulations. Combined between his Instagram and TikTok accounts. He also likes to educate himself and has completed multiple continuing education courses on exercise techniques, manual therapy, and ergonomics. So welcome to the show. Your content is awesome. It is so helpful and so simple, which I love. And I'm excited to get into this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I think this will be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So why don't you give everyone just a little bit of your backgrounds? And I gave a little bit of it, but just, your background and how you grew on your platforms and all that stuff.
Sure. I've been a practicing physical therapist for just under 10 years now. I think next year will be year number 9. And about halfway through practicing in 2020, I was working at the time as a physical therapist inside of a very large office building. I was treating the people that worked in the office building, and it was great. Things were humming along. Couldn't have been going better. Everybody was in network because we were partnered with their employer. Nobody had a commute to come see us because they're already working in the building. And then in 2020, the world ended, as some people may remember. And becoming or working as a physical therapist inside of a large office building went from the best job I could think of in physical therapy to quite literally no job at all. And in the time that I had no patience because nobody was coming into work, I also developed a crippling TikTok addiction. And
Didn't we all?
Did we all? And it kind of got to the point to where I was spending so much time consuming videos on the app that I decided that I either needed to delete the app and step away, or I needed to find a way to turn that time into something productive. And at the time, TikTok was still very much memes and dances and pranks and jokes and things like that. But I had seen one chiropractor out in Seattle make a post on neck pain, and it had 2 million views. And
Wow.
I kind of thought to myself, I was like, well, I think I could do that. And I've got nothing but time. And I've been learning about this platform now for so long that I took a risk and I made my first video, and 3 weeks later I went viral for the first time, and the rest was kind of history.
Wow. What was the first video?
So the first video was just, I didn't know how to edit anything. You can see me hit the button in the middle of the phone to start the recording. At the end, I hit the button at the end to stop the recording. There's no cuts, there's no camera movements, and I kind of just muddle my way through like a simple neck mobilization.
Nice.
And then the first post that went viral at the time, there was a trending song going around about twerking. And and I decided to post my 7 favorite glute exercises to that sound. And it went for like 2.5 million views. And it took me from what I had built up to be just under maybe 1,000 followers all the way up to 15,000 followers. And
oh my gosh.
The momentum kind of never stopped after that. And then terms of my in-person practice now, about 3 years ago, my girlfriend and I decided to move to New York City. And when I moved to New York City, I was contacted by someone named Brittany Mims, who all she said for the most part in a DM, I had never met her before, was, would you ever be interested in working on Broadway? And at the time I had moved to New York City without a job. Luckily, I was financially stable enough from some social media things that I had time to kind of get boots on the ground and figure out where I wanted to take my career in a brand new city. And so I had nothing but time. I went to go meet her, and we immediately hit it off. We talked for about 3 hours.
Wow.
And it turns out that the reason that she had messaged me is because she held the contracts to provide physical therapy for 2 different shows on Broadway. At the time, the shows that she was providing physical therapy to were Chicago and Beetlejuice. And when you're providing physical therapy to Broadway shows, you go to the theater, and a lot of times they want you to be there on their 2 show days. So mostly on a Wednesday and a Saturday. And it's really hard to find physical therapists that can work every Saturday. And so she likes having a nice Rolodex of people that she can call just to kind of go on a Saturday or go on a weekend here or there when somebody can't make it. And after we talked for 3 hours and really hit it off, I said, the fascinating thing about working the occasional Saturday is that I'd love to work 40 hours a week. And at the time, she was working in what was basically a WeWork for healthcare practitioners. It was a very nice looking clinic, but all of the rooms were available for rent for $40 an hour. If you wanted like time in the gym, you could spend $30 an hour to get 30 minutes in the gym. But it was a place for young practitioners, whether you're physical therapists, massage therapists, even personal trainers, to kind of see people in a spot that was very nice, but you didn't have to devote any capital to it. You didn't have to take a big financial risk. And that's where she was. And she had at the time 1 physical therapy assistant working 20 hours a week and 1 PT working 10 hours a week. And that was it. And so there was really no room for me because it's hard to grow in a space like that. And also 40 hours a week was hardly even like the combined treating time of her entire practice at the time. But we decided to take a risk on each other. And 4 months after that, we opened up our first brick and mortar clinic. A few months after that, we hired 2 more PTs, and then we partnered with an HR company so we could provide benefits. And now in the space that we opened up about 3 years ago, we are completely at capacity after our most recent hire. Once she fills her schedule, there is truly no more room to take any more patients. And so in 2026, we're officially going to have to maybe get a new clinic or expand in some way because we have kind of tapped out the amount of people we can fit in our current space. And that's kind of the journey I've been on as a
That's so
physical
cool.
therapist.
And I heard there's a waiting list if people want to see you.
Correct. Yeah. So currently, for new patients, there is about a 4 to 6 week waiting list, and that is not just for me. That is that pretty much goes for almost every PT in our clinic because we have gotten to be so popular.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. So let's get into some physical therapy talk. So
let's do it.
Let's do it. So what are some of the common ailments that you're seeing at your clinic, and how can we prevent them as like regular people in the world?
So a lot of the ailments that I see in the clinic, since we do work on Broadway and we do partner with a lot of dance schools in New York City, we do treat a lot of professional dancers and performers, meaning that I see a lot of hip pain, I see a lot of shoulder pain, and a lot of the dancer specific stuff is a lot of fun. There's such a fun population to work with. But in terms of just the average everyday people that we also see in the clinic, it's almost split about 50-50 these days, I would say. The thing that can't be underrated is just moving throughout the day. So many of the aches and pains that we are dealing with are due to being sedentary or due to being stagnant. I think it's really easy, especially if you work a desk job, just to kind of lose track of time and lose track of how long you've been not moving. And it's the not moving that allows everything to kind of get tight and get weak. And that's what allows things to kind of fester and grow. And outside of even anything specific, just standing up more throughout the day or investing in a standing desk so that you can alternate between sitting and standing throughout the day. Or every time you get up to go to the bathroom, maybe just do 10 squats to the chair. Or there are a bunch of little ways that you can fit in more movement. And it's truly the movement that sets a lot of people free.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably being on the computers and phones and people's necks and all of that stuff. Okay, so what is the tiny daily habit that can add years to your life, and why should everybody start today? Because I've heard you say this, and I'd like to hear it.
So I think it all goes back to movement. It's getting in steps. It's finding a form of exercise that you really enjoy. A question I get a lot is, what is the best form of exercise for me? I'm a blank, and it doesn't matter what blank you are. the best form of exercise is an exercise that you enjoy, because if you enjoy the exercise, you are far more likely to do it on a regular basis. And you're far less likely to think, oh, I'm just going to skip the workout today, or, oh, I'm not feeling it. But the key to longevity is staying active, it is being strong, and it is moving on a very regular basis.
If you've ever felt like the wellness space is a little too much, we get it. Enter the Wellness Junkies newsletter, which gives you quick, no fluff updates on what's worth trying, what actually works, how to make wellness feel doable. Think insider finds, expert tips with a dose of good energy in your inbox each week. It's quick, it's easy, it's a fun read. We're all figuring it out together, and our newsletter just keeps it real and not perfect. Subscribe at substack.com/@wellnessjunkies and join the community.
Do people come to you and your practice because they have a specific ailment, or is it proactive? Because the only times I or people in my family have gone to a PT is like there's something specific they want to work on. But do people just come? I mean, like, what do you see in your practice?
For the most part, we see people that have been dealing with something for a long period of time, that have seen a lot of other medical providers and just have not found the answer that they're looking for. So there are a few things that kind of lead to that. The first is that we are a one-on-one clinic. If you make an appointment with us, we see you for a full hour in a private room, and it's all you. In a lot of in-network clinics, the PT may be seeing 2, 3, even 4 patients per hour, and you only get maybe 10 to 15 minutes with that PT before they hand you off with an aide. And it's really hard to kind of get the dedicated attention. And so the privateness is what a lot of people kind of seek. And then also, I think that there's very few healthcare practitioners, period. It doesn't matter what line of work that you work in, that can sit and talk with someone for a full hour. And then because we do have a 4 to 6 week wait list, we see not a bunch of people that, oh, I sprained my ankle yesterday, like, what can I do for this? Or, oh, I got surgery recently, what can I do? Like, what can I work on for this? Because we are a little bit more expensive. So it's mostly, it is always specific, but it is mostly chronic, and it's mostly because they've had failed experiences elsewhere.
Yeah. So what are some things that we can do at home for back pain? I know you talk a lot about restless leg syndrome, which I don't really know what that is, but it sounds like it's something common that people have. So what are some of the things we can just do at home?
The best things that you can do at home. So there are all kinds of different exercise. So let's say, I think one of the best things that people can do at home is some sort of mat Pilates or mat yoga, especially if you're not comfortable going into a gym or you're not comfortable going to a workout class. I think one of the best things you could do is just invest in a yoga mat. I think a yoga mat is really important because it gives you like a little bit of something different inside of your home that can kind of transport you to okay, when I'm on this mat, I'm going to be active. And there are all kinds of really great YouTube accounts that have even like 10 to 15 minute mat Pilates workouts or yoga workouts. And just kind of taking those 10 to 15 minutes for yourself to get out of the chair, off the couch, out of the bed, onto the floor, which in itself is a good skill to have as you kind of age, just getting on and off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one thing that I found is the more you try and the more you move, the more you're going to figure out what it is that you enjoy. And I think the nice part, especially when it comes to back pain, or especially when it comes to chronic pain, is the research suggests that specific exercises and like very hyper-focused exercises at the end of the day do not outperform even just general exercise. And so I try to educate people on the idea that you don't have to worry about the specifics. You don't have to worry about like doing the perfect exercise or the perfect movement, because at the end of the day, the research suggests that as long as you're moving, period, and as long as you're doing it consistently, and as long as you're trying to learn and take steps to work on whatever it is that's ailing you, you will be very likely to find success.
And do you recommend yoga or Pilates on a mat from a flexibility and stretching standpoint? Is that why you think that's something people should be doing every day?
I think both. I think both yoga and Pilates are really good at encouraging people to do something that is outside of their norm. So even in the gym, if you're doing something like a squat, that's not too different from getting on and off a chair. If you're doing a lunge, that's at the end of the day not too different from the position you have to get in to put on your shoes. But the movements in yoga and the movements in Pilates are so different and provide a lot of variety to the way that we're used to moving our body, that it can only be positive, because at the end of the day, variety is the spice of life, and variety is the thing that keeps muscles and joints happy.
Yeah, I do those, so that's good to hear, and I do feel so much better after I, finish a workout, and I've gotten so much more flexible, I feel like, because of it, and stronger. What is restless leg syndrome?
Restless leg syndrome is most frequently experienced when you're trying to fall asleep at night, almost always felt kind of in that period of time where you first lay down and try to fall asleep, or even if you've kind of entered that spot where you're halfway asleep and halfway not asleep, then the restless leg syndrome can kind of kick in. And what people mostly feel is a combination between numbness or tingling, or something just doesn't feel quite right, to the point to where you almost want to flail around, kick around, and just kind of like shake free of the sensation that you're feeling. And at the end of the day, restless leg syndrome can be caused from all kinds of things. It can be caused from an electrolyte imbalance. It can be caused from a dieting issue. It can be caused from uh, a whole source of different genetic disorders, or it could be a symptom of different medication, or a symptom of different things. So the one thing that I generally recommend for restless leg syndrome is anytime in the body when you're feeling the tingling or the numbness, or that fuzzy feeling, we know that that is coming from the nerves. The only thing that can provide that sensation is from the nerves. And there are some of the nerves in the body that are bigger than others. In the back of your leg, you have the sciatic nerve, which everybody's heard of, because sciatica can be such a normal and common diagnosis. In the front of the leg, you have your femoral nerve. And so a lot of times what I'll do is there are very easy ways that you can gently mobilize these nerves even while laying in bed. So you don't have to get up out of bed. You don't have to kind of take yourself out of that sleep mode. You can try to just do these very easy nerve glides, with the goal of, if you're taking a nerve that is tight and inflamed and symptomatic, and you do some gentle gliding, you can kind of get the sensations to calm down, and hopefully calm down enough to get some sleep.
Interesting. I didn't realize that just happens to people. Like, can that happen outside of bed too? Like, if you're just like sitting around, like laying around watching a show, or is it mostly like at night?
It's mostly at night, and there are a bunch of theories as to why that is. I think the prevailing theory is the same reason that if you are dealing with some sort of nagging pain or chronic pain, it feels worse at night. And it's because you're kind of just removed from the distractions of the day. Your body is really good at, if you're sitting and working, or if you're running an errand, or if you're somehow otherwise preoccupied, because that pain may be fairly minimal, at least relative to what it is that you're doing throughout the day. Your adrenaline overrides it. Your brain isn't able to focus on it. And then when you finally make it home, and you're sitting on the couch, or you finally make it in bed, and you're trying to fall asleep, and you're just removed from the distractions of the day, all of a sudden that small sensation starts to kind of build. And that's
Yeah,
when you can kind of feel it the most.
got it. Okay, so I know you talk about therapy bands and self massage techniques and how they can really transform your health. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in my book, especially, a lot of the exercises involve therapy bands, or I really like a Pilates ring. And then I also really like to educate people on self massage techniques. And it all revolves around the idea of, if you can do something inside the home without having to leave, you're far more likely to do it, especially if you can do it in just 3 to 5 minutes. And so things like therapy bands can be really good for muscle activation, but more importantly, excuse me, they don't take up any room. Therapy band folds up very small. You can keep it in any apartment, you can keep it in any house. Even a Pilates ring doesn't take up a lot of space. And if you're equipped with the knowledge of how you can provide some self massage, and you can get to the point to, like, let's say you try a self massage technique for even 3 to 5 minutes, and you notice that it works, and you notice that it helps, then you might be able to say, okay, well, if I can do this a little bit and it does help, I bet if I found a professional that could do it for 20 to 30 minutes, then I'd feel significantly better. And so the idea behind a lot of the techniques in the book and the idea behind a lot of the things that you can do in the house is, yeah, sometimes it is enough to resolve whatever issue that you're dealing with. And yeah, a lot of times it is enough to, if you've already put in the work to reduce a certain pain, this is enough to help maintain that really good effect that you've seen. But at the worst, at the very worst, it points you in the right direction of some other things that will help. And you may just need that extra little bit of seeing a professional in person.
Right. What's a massage technique we can do at home for our neck? Because I feel like everyone I know has like neck pain, including me.
Yeah. So when it comes to neck pain, there actually aren't a lot of great self massage options. And instead, it's best to find the source that is leading to the chronic neck pain. So most people, especially people that spend their days working at the desk, it's twofold. One, if you are not allowing your shoulders to carry the weight of your arms, the only place that you can offset that weight of your arms is in the muscles of the neck. And so most people that I see with chronic neck pain that it doesn't seem to resolve to with stretching, and even when they go in and get a massage, yeah, it feels great, but that neck tension comes back within 2 to 3 days. For the most part, that is not a neck issue. If it was a neck issue, the stretching would have more of a lasting effect. The massage would have more of a lasting effect. But the fact that it comes back so quickly, it's likely somewhere else. And in almost every single person that I see that has consistent chronic neck pain in the upper traps, in the neck, even sometimes leading to the tension headaches, a lot of the times it is due to weakness in the rotator cuff and the rotator cuff being unable to handle the weight of the arms. And then everything is being overcompensated and off weighted by maintaining the weight of the arms with the upper traps, keeping everything tight and painful. And there are a lot of great self massage techniques that you could do for the rotator cuff to help unlock it. There are a lot of great exercises you could do for the rotator cuff to help unlock it. And especially if you haven't already been working on that, I have seen just adding that be the only thing that people need to finally get rid of that nagging kind of neck pain. And
Oh,
then
interesting.
the other thing that I see, if it's not just the strength of the shoulders, is if you're working at a desk, the like whether you're a corporate warrior and you're answering emails all day or whatever it is that you do, if most of your days are sat sitting at a computer, especially if you're typing, one of the main ways that I've seen chronic neck pain or chronic neck tightness develop is in people that don't allow the desk or the surface in front of them to support their forearms. I call it kind of like hover arms. So if you can imagine when you're sitting and typing, if the only thing touching anything is your fingers touching the keyboard, the only thing that you're able to stabilize and hold your arms with is your upper traps. But if you can get your computer in a spot that's maybe a little bit further away from you and you can create some space and you can rest your forearms on the table surface and truly allow the table to support the weight of your arms, all of a sudden you feel a massive decrease in the work that the neck is doing, and you can feel just that tension just fall away from the upper traps. And I've had that one small tip lead to a whole bunch of success in people experiencing those chronic neck symptoms, especially around working a computer.
Yeah, because I'm thinking even with your laptop, it's like if you have your laptop, let's say you're out and you have it like in your lap, you're just kind of typing and you're not supported. I never thought about that before.
Exactly.
That's a great tip. What do you? We were talking about therapy bands and self massage techniques. What do you think of foam roller? I use that a lot, but I'm just wondering what you think of that.
I think a foam roller can be really great, especially if you've already noticed that you do see a reduction in symptoms when you use it. Uh, I There are a lot of people in my industry that are anti foam roller, and their argument is more so around nothing you could do on the foam roller will completely take away the reason it's tight, and there's nothing you can do on a foam roller that an exercise or mobilization can't do. And I think that that's an interesting point But I do think that when people make that point, they completely lose track of nuance, and they lose track of the fact that why can't you do it all? Especially if somebody already has had success using a foam roller and feels better after using the foam roller. Why would I be the person to take that away from them? Especially if after feeling better after using a foam roller, they're more likely to do their exercises. They're more likely to do the movement. So I think when it comes to a foam roller, I don't think that you should be using it in a way to completely resolve your symptoms. But if you're using it to make yourself feel better and take the edge off some of the tension, and then go after your exercises and go after your mobilizations, then I think that's the perfect implementation.
Yeah. This is a question that's I've experienced a lot in my house because I have a husband and two young teenage boys, and they are all so tight in their hamstrings, like they can't even touch their toes. And I'm always like, you guys have to stretch. I don't even know what they're supposed to be doing, but what should people do, specifically men, for tight hamstrings?
So
Tight hamstrings.
sure. So first of all, how old are your kids?
So I have an 18-year-old, he's in college, and I have a 16-year-old, and
Okay.
then husband.
Have they stopped growing?
I don't think so.
Okay. So when it comes to uh, boys, as they're in their puberty stage and they've not quite made it to their fully grown self yet, the thing that happens is your bones grow at a rate that outpaces your muscles. And the idea of growing pains happens because your bones grow faster than your muscles, and they pull the muscles and keep them on stretch. And so that pain that a lot of boys, primarily because they can go through like bigger growth spurts, but the idea of growing pains is your bones outpacing your muscles and feeling that tightness. And so in a lot of those boys, chances are their full flexibility will not be able to be unlocked until they have stopped growing and their muscles can catch up. And then that's when they can start to have more success going through the stretches and doing those things, because finally their muscles are the appropriate size for their bones. That being said, doing hamstring mobilizations and doing hamstring stretches and hamstring exercises can only help. But if they find themselves hitting themselves up against the wall despite working on it, that can be what's going on. And when it comes to your husband, a lot of times that truly is like just a lack of stretching type of presentation. One thing that happens when you spend your time sitting, so especially if he works a desk job, is when your knees are bent to 90 degrees, which is your classic kind of sitting position, you're just sitting in a chair with your feet flat on the ground, your hamstrings are in a very shortened position. And if you kind of spend all your days sitting at a desk working on a computer, and then you spend most of your days sitting on a couch, you're spending 90% of your waking hours with your hamstrings in a shortened position. And sometimes it's not enough if you're only working out an hour twice a week to kind of rectify that tightness. So a lot of times if I'm seeing a desk worker or somebody like that that is experiencing kind of hamstring symptoms, I educate them on the fact that sitting with your feet flat on the ground does keep the hamstrings in a very tight position. And then also try to give them some very easy stretches or mobilizations they can do just sitting in their chair. So they don't even have to get up. But maybe every hour, every 2 hours, you just scoot your chair back, you take 30 seconds and you just kind of lengthen things and get them out of that shortened position. Even doing something as small as that can be helpful.
Yeah. So just being aware of it and making sure you're kind of doing things throughout the day.
Right.
Yeah, he's pretty good at stretching, and he plays a lot of golf and walks a lot, but he's still pretty tight. He's working on it.
Okay. Well, Godspeed to him.
Yeah. And is there anything that we should just be doing, like from a stretch standpoint on a daily basis, like something that's like full body, just to like keep things kind of like limber, like I feel like when I get up in the morning, I do like a set of stretches, but they're just random. I don't have a formula. I just kind of stretch what feels good. But is there anything we can be doing just to feel less tight?
I think random is great. And then I also think that, especially when you're doing something like a stretch, I think it is best if it is intuitive. The amount of people that I've had come in to see me with tightness in a certain muscle group, and then even after doing an evaluation and kind of figuring out where they're tight or why they might be tight, I show them a mobilization or I show them a stretch. And then the amount of times that I've heard them say, "Oh, I started doing that just on my own. Like I thought that would help," is Astronomical. It's so high. The body is really good at kind of getting yourself into positions that for the most part can be helpful. Granted, sometimes they may not be helpful, but for the most part, you can feel free to trust your intuition and just stretch in the ways that your body's asking. That being said, going back to kind of yoga, there's a routine called, morning salutations or something along those lines that is truly just a 5 or 10 minute routine. And it does a really good job of taking you from a standing position to putting you on the ground. And it works the back into extension and it works the back into flexion. And it takes the legs and puts them into some different positions. And it moves the arms up over your head and then down below your head. The key when it comes to doing a daily routine is that you want to address everything and you want to try to take all of your major joints to their end range of motion. And if you're doing those things, then you can probably rest easy in the fact that you're doing something pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Okay, switching topics a bit, and I don't know if this is even in your world, but it came up recently because I have aging parents and my mom has some arthritis issues happening. And I was with her at the doctor the other day and I asked the doctor, I was like, how it, because they said arthritis is genetic and you can't really do much about it. And I'm like, is there something proactive that we can do to prevent arthritis? Because it's just like, she's totally healthy, but like she's got a few things in her hand now and then this and that. And I'm like, how do you prevent it if there's a way to prevent it, or does it just happen and you have to deal with it?
So you can't prevent arthritis, really. Arthritis is as natural a part of aging as gray hair and wrinkles. It's just something that happens. But the important thing to remember is that all arthritis means, if you break it down to its Latin roots, is arth means joint and itis means inflammation. And all it is a little bit of wear and tear in the joints after living a long and well-spent life, just doing things and fighting the war against gravity. That being said, while there's nothing you can do to prevent the onset of arthritis, there is a lot that you can do to prevent arthritis from being the source of your symptoms. There have been a lot of studies that take people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they give them x-rays, and they find that this perfectly healthy person with no pain whatsoever has a bunch of arthritis in their knees. This person who's experiencing knee pain on a regular basis on an x-ray has the same amount of arthritis in their knees. So arthritis is not actually a great predictor of symptoms, especially when you get to the point to where if you are in your 70s or 80s, the figure is somewhere around 90% of people in their 70s or 80s have arthritis, diagnosed arthritis in at least one joint. And chances are that it's prevalent in more than just one joint. But they're not feeling consistent crippling discomfort because of that arthritis. So when you are having pain with arthritis, that means you're having pain at the level of the joint. And when you're having pain at the level of the joint, the most important thing that you can do is build the strength of the muscles that cross that joint. Because the stronger the muscles are and the more capable the muscles are of offsetting whatever it is that you're doing with your joints, the less relative stress will go through the joints and the less irritation and inflammation will be present because of the arthritis. So when I have somebody with arthritis, the main thing I tell them is that all the arthritis does is it kind of like it lowers your margin for error. Because you already know that you have a certain level of degeneration in the joint, and because you already know that you have a certain level of inflammation in the joint, you're kind of always a little bit closer to pain than maybe somebody who has perfectly healthy joints. But that's all it means. You can still build the strength and you can still build the flexibility. You can do all kinds of things to off-weight that joint and take the stress away from that joint. It just lowers your margin for error for pain.
So strengthening the area around the joint, you're saying, helps to alleviate the pain.
Correct.
Interesting, because like my mom was having pain in her hands and they gave her like a brace, but to me that would like immobilize it, and it's just like maybe temporarily helps, but it seems like she should be also working on the other stuff too, strengthening.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it's the same thing when you sprain your ankle and you're put in a brace. The If you're having a really hard time and you're very inflamed, it does help throughout most of the day to keep it protected and to keep it from uh, experiencing those increased symptoms of inflammation. But you still have to go to physical therapy and do your ankle exercises, because if you're not doing the exercises, then you're not building the strength and you're not doing anything to kind of come back from that. So yeah, the doctor probably felt that the brace was a good idea because she was experiencing so many symptoms. But like you said, you can't just rely on the brace, because if you only are in the brace, then the muscles will start to atrophy and then everything will get a little stiffer. But if she's alternating being in the brace to keep it protected for the most part, and then doing some sort of strengthening or flexibility or some sort of work to just increase the quality of movement in her hands, then she should be okay.
Yeah, she is doing physical therapy for her other hand. And it was funny because she said they were starting to work on that other hand. So I think she is doing a combination of both. So that's good
Good.
to know. Um, so on another topic, you mentioned this before about the Broadway performers and dancers. So I danced growing up. So like I love that whole world. So I'm just curious, like, how is it working with them? That must be so much fun.
It is so much fun. And it's so much fun to get to know somebody in the clinic and get to know them as a person and just work with them as a person, and then see them on stage and see what they're capable of. And it's like, I didn't know you could do that. That's so fun. That's so cool. But it's truly such a fun population to work with, because for a bunch of reasons. First of all, theater kids are the nicest people you ever meet in your whole life, and they're so kind and warm, and you never have a bad day working with a theater kid. They're such wonderful people, and they're also very good at moving their body, and they're very intuitive when it comes to things with their body. And so when I see someone who doesn't have that level of experience moving their body, it can take a lot of conversation and it can take a lot of digging to finally get down to the root of the problem. But when I see a dancer or a performer that's experiencing something in their body, they can come to me and be like, when I do this passe, I feel it in my talocrural joint, and I think it's affecting my soleus and this and that and this and that. And I'm like, perfect. Let's get to work. And then when it comes time to giving an exercise or giving a mobilization or giving a movement, it takes very little cueing and very little conversation to get them to do the right thing. And so it's rewarding all around, and it's the best niche I think I've ever worked with.
That's so fun. That's so cool. Is there, I mean, because those guys, I mean, they work so hard. They're like, what, 6 days a week, pounding. I mean, is there an ailment that you see that's like common amongst people, or is everyone's kind of issues different? It must be so hard on the body to just, be doing that every day.
Yeah, it definitely varies based on what their role in the show is. And so, for the most part, the people that I see on the most regular basis are people in the ensemble, because they're doing the most dancing. And for the most part, the women in the show, it's a lot of hips, because they're asked to do a lot of kicks, a lot of splits, a lot of things like that. And for the men, it's a lot of shoulders, because they're doing a lot of the lifts and they're doing a lot of the carrying and they're doing a lot of the that kind of thing. And then for the principals, it is a lot of times like voice and neck related, because they're doing the most speaking, they're doing the most singing. It just creates a lot of strain, especially through the front of the neck. And then if they're getting fatigued in their diaphragm or fatigued kind of down through their ribs, then they kind of off weight that through their upper traps and through their neck, and they can kind of start to overcompensate in that kind of way. So those, I would say, are the generalities, but the specifics definitely vary to what their role is in the show.
Yeah. I don't know if you mentioned this before. How do you loosen the hips? Because I feel like that's also a really common ailment for a lot of people.
Yeah, it just depends on what in the hip is causing the discomfort. So for a lot of people, it can be the hip flexor, in which case we might do some hip flexor stretches and hip flexor strengthening. Sometimes the tightness people feel in the hips is because of a lack of internal rotation. And so we do a lot of mobilizations and loosening up for something like the piriformis and the glutes, and then we do a lot of mobilizations to get that internal rotation back. Sometimes irritation in the hips is actually referral pain from irritation in the back. And so that's why it can be so important to see a professional in person, or at least try a bunch of different things on your own to find the thing that aligns with you. Because sometimes when somebody says my hips are stiff, that one statement can cover a whole
Right.
multitude of
So
different
broad.
diagnoses. Right. It's so broad. It's way more broad than you think it might be. And until you find the actual source, you may have very little success kind of treating it on your own.
What are you seeing? I know we talked about dancers and performers, but from an athlete standpoint, what sports, are there any certain sports that you see are causing like the most havoc on the body right now?
So I played baseball all the way through college. I was a pitcher. And for pitchers specifically, it's the shoulders or elbows because they're doing a lot of throwing. For basketball players, it's a lot of ankles and it's a lot of Achilles because they're doing a lot of jumping and cutting. For football players, it can be a lot of knees because they're doing their cutting on in cleats and on turf, and then that's a little bit tougher on the knees. And so it really does depend on the sport. But when it comes to any specifics, I will say one thing that is super important is that most of the people playing sports in this country and around the world are high schoolers. They're middle schoolers and high schoolers and kids. And very few people get to the point to where they're continuing to play a sport past their 20s. And there's been this shift, even from when I played sports as a kid, to you put your like back then, you put your kid in sports to give them something to do and to get them on a team and to experience losing and experience being a teammate and experience getting guidance from somebody that wasn't a parental figure. You're getting guidance from a coach. And all of a sudden, it has slowly shifted over time to I'm putting my kid in sports so that they can be a professional athlete. And it's kind of scary because way less than 1% of people that play in little league make it to the major leagues. Way less than 1% of people that play pee wee football make it to the NFL. The chances of your kid making it to the professional level is so slim. But these patients or these parents are hyper specializing them. They feel like, oh, if I want them to be a professional athlete, I have to get them in baseball and only baseball, and they're going to play baseball year round. And so most of the injuries when it comes to sports are because of the early specialization and the fact that they're doing the same movements month after month, year after year, and they're never doing anything to challenge their body in different ways. And the mental burnout and the physical burnout is insane. And so the main
Yeah,
thing
it's gotten out of control
it's
with these
out of
parents.
control. And so the main thing that I try to educate parents on is you should have your kid play as many sports as possible for as long as possible. If they get to the point to where they're a junior in high school and they're excelling at one sport, then maybe you can start to have the conversation as they approach 18 years old that, okay, maybe it's time to only pick one sport. But if your kid is good enough to make it to the professional level at one sport or the other, they will be able to do that while playing three sports. They'll be able to do that while playing one sport. So the hyper specialization really hasn't been shown to increase your likelihood of getting your kid to that professional level. So just let them have fun. Let them play as many sports as possible. Let them kind of vary their movements, and chances are you'll see a marked reduction in the overall level of injuries.
That's good advice. Makes sense. What about like adult everyday sports like tennis and pickleball and golf and those sorts of sports?
They're great. They're perfect. Again, the best form of movement and the best form of exercise is exercise that you enjoy. I have some patients, especially in New York, where tennis is like very big. People in New York love tennis. I have people that is the only form of exercise they do because it's the only form of exercise that they enjoy. And so I think it's all any movement, any exercise, it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. I just keep hearing, I've played pickleball a little bit, but I keep hearing about like so many people that get injured from playing pickleball. So it makes me nervous.
Sure. I mean, you can get injured doing any sort of thing. If you are doing something like pickleball, I think the most important thing you could do if you're picking up a new sport as someone who's a little older and as someone who hasn't played a sport in a while, is you just need to be honest with yourself in terms of what the demands are of the sport are versus what you've been doing on a regular basis for the past few years. And I think people have a tendency to look at pickleball and be like, oh, it takes place on this little small court. And oh, I just have to move like a little bit side to side. But they lose track of the fact that they haven't had to cut very quickly in 10 to 15 years. And that can be a big jump up for someone who spends most of their time being sedentary. So you need to look at the sport and decide how different it is from the way that you've been living your life. And maybe you would benefit from doing stretches and exercises and some like agility kind of drills to bridge the gap between where you currently are to being able to do that sport safely.
Yeah. My mother-in-law is 80 and still plays tennis, and it's amazing.
That's great. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's so cool. Okay, let's get into our quick wrap session. What is your favorite wellness hack? I'm sure you have many.
I think we talked about it a lot, and it's just daily movement. It's just moving more. It's move 10 to 15 more minutes a day than you planned on it. And that's the biggest wellness fitness hack that I have.
Good one. And how do you maintain your daily nirvana, meaning like your balance? How do you stay grounded? I mean, you're helping people all day long. So, how do you take care of yourself?
I think the way that I maintain my sanity is I think it's very useful for me to live in New York City because I get to look out the window and I see all the big buildings and I see people moving around and I just get the sense that the world will keep spinning regardless of how I'm feeling or regardless of little decisions I make throughout the day. Like everything will be okay and everything will keep moving. And so kind of recognizing the scale of the world and recognizing that the part that I play is so small. I feel like it brings me a lot of peace in terms of making decisions throughout the day.
I love that perspective. And where can everybody find you?
The best place to find me is at dr.dan_dpt on Instagram and TikTok. That is where I post the most, and that's the best place to find me.
Yeah, and your content, I know I said this before, but it's very helpful and accessible. I just find it very easy to follow and really good tips. So yes, everybody should check them out. Well, thank you for joining us. This was so educational. I really had a great time hearing about all of this, and I need to go stretch now.
Yes, go move for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Wellness Junkies. For more on today's episode, follow us on Instagram at Wellness Junkies Official and find us on TikTok and YouTube at Wellness Junkies. You can also head to wellnessjunkiesofficial.com for expanded show notes, product links, and more. If you love the episode, leave a review and share it with a friend. We appreciate the love. Catch you next week. Bye.